Hi, everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Did You Know? I am your host, Laurie Brooke. Did You Know is a series dedicated to showcasing all the wonderful people who are here, ready, willing, and able to help you with your relationship before, during, and after separation. I am your host, Laurie Brooke, and I'm here to help you guide and do conflict better. If you want to know more, you can find me at therelationshiparchitect.com.au. In the meantime, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode where I get to ask, Did you know? Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Did You Know? And today I am joined by Dave Berman. Dave is a mental wellbeing coach who helps people have a better emotional experience of life. And this is especially valuable for parents struggling to help their kids develop emotional intelligence. And as a parent, we've all been there. Dave's innovative work play with infinity laughter has taken him across native US and around the world to teach in 10 other countries so far. He previously lived in Vietnam for nearly 2 years and has called Melbourne home since just before COVID. That wasn't planned, I know, from my conversations with Dave, but here we are nonetheless. And I'm super excited because his stay in Melbourne has meant that I have got to know him, and which has meant that he can come on the show. So thank you so much for joining me today, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Laurie. I appreciate the invitation.
You're very welcome. I want to start off with what many people won't know about you is that you deal with laughter.
Yes.
And you've done a whole series on laughing with people. And during COVID, this is what I found fascinating. During COVID, Dave would bring people together to just laugh.
Yeah.
So tell me about
Yeah.
this. How does it actually help?
Okay, so we need to understand, first of all, that your infinite laughter supply is always available. You were born with infinite laughter within you. Like, you can't count how many times you've laughed or how many laughs you've used up. There's no such thing. Your infinite laughter supply is always available. It's inside you and me and every other human. And it doesn't depend on anything. We don't need the condition of funny to be present. We don't need jokes or comedy or humor. We don't need exercises like some other approaches to laughter teach. It is infinite within us. And so, how it works, the way it seems to me, is you just surrender. Like, the universe will laugh through you. And it's just breath and sound, same as speaking, only without words or thinking.
And I think you've just touched on the point there, and it is without thinking.
Yes.
Because so many of us get caught up in, well, how do I think about this? What do I do? What's the process? Are people going to look at me funny? Like, you've got that mental dialogue going on, right?
Yeah.
Where we're judging ourselves and we're thinking that it has to be harder than what it actually is.
Yeah. Well, my journey and exploration and sort of self-discovery through laughter is often something that I refer to as pointing us to understanding the nature of thought. And I don't want to get too deep into that right now. I think we'll circle back to the nature
Yeah.
of thought later in the interview. But if it's true about laughter, it's true about life, right? So we can find everything we need already inside us. And the experience of being human really is about getting out of our own way. And so when we don't understand how thought is creating our perception, how thought is responsible for all our problems, when we treat all our thoughts as if they're true, um, uh, what's happening for you right now? I see the expression on your face, but I can't assume what it means.
Oh, I have to totally agree in terms of the role that thought plays and how much, I suppose, emotional energy and baggage can get caught up in our thinking. We can use getting caught up in our thinking, I should say. But it reminds me of, I suppose, I was reading on your website today about, and this is the words that you use, how you feel about a situation reflects how you look at it.
Of course.
Because we've got I suppose everyone has a situation. And for the people listening to this, they're often caught in a situation where they're struggling, they're in conflict. And when they're looking at the situation, they don't see anything to laugh about. And they don't feel like there is a way out. But that is very much the thought process that they're caught up in.
Well, if you are looking for something to laugh about as if reasons for laughing are outside of you, you're just looking in the wrong direction. And that is so common, so human, right? So, no fault or blame or guilt or shame or regret for having fallen into that misunderstanding. It's the most human thing, right? And when your understanding expands, when your awareness expands, that's really the only thing that is needed to offset the misunderstanding, right? So understanding trumps misunderstanding. And in the experience, not the words, nothing I say can make a difference for you. You have to find everything in your own experience. So when you look within and find you can laugh even when nothing is funny, when you don't look in the wrong direction, you look in the right direction, not outside but inside, you discover your infinite laughter supply is always available. And when you allow your own laughter experience to be your guide and your teacher, you'll discover if it's true about laughter, it's true about life. So it's not only your infinite laughter supply that's always available, it's your infinite curiosity supply, your infinite creativity supply, your infinite resilience supply.
Mm.
As long as you're not looking outside for any of those things, you'll find it within you.
But it is almost like we have been conditioned somewhat to look outside, or that it is easier to look outside than to look inside.
Well, how's that working out for you?
Yeah. Great question. What I want to circle back to though, Dave, is, and one of the reasons where you're here is to talk about how we can help our kids, because they are going through some difficult times, especially when they're faced with this separation and divorce, and they could be struggling emotionally and just going through teenage years where things get a little bit difficult hormonally anyway. I know you've been on this journey. So can you take us back to when you were a teenager and what started this process for you?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is really valuable in just understanding myself, and then to invite others to kind of relate and understand. So I was a moody teen, and that's not really abnormal necessarily. Teenagers experience great swings in their emotions, and they don't necessarily know how to make sense of it. And I didn't when I was a teenager either. But I was brought up in an environment where everybody in my family had some kind of diagnosis for mental illness, was in some kind of therapy, was taking some kind of prescription medication. That's what was normal, right? So you can think of it in a metaphor, like that's the water I was swimming in, but I wasn't even aware that I was swimming in water, right? This is a metaphor that I like to use that's on the web page that you were referring to. It says fish don't know they're in water. Fish don't know they're in water. And the human equivalent is we think lots of thoughts that we don't even realize we're thinking. These are our beliefs. We treat them as true, and we're not even aware that they exist. So I was raised in this environment that was reinforcing all sorts of misunderstandings about where my feelings came from and about how to make sense of them and about how to cope and deal with them. So I spent countless late night hours crying and like trying to tell my mom what was wrong in my life and in my just misunderstandings that I didn't know were misunderstandings, just just struggling, just being a young person struggling, not understanding my experience of life, and having my mom, who was a marriage and family therapist, trained in all, like family systems therapy, which basically says everything is patterns repeating, which I'm sure it was because my family for generations, all these mental health issues, and every one of them was a misunderstanding about where feelings are coming from and the nature of thought. So my mom was reinforcing this. So my mom and I were both swimming in water that was polluted by our own misunderstandings. And she was doing her best. Like, I never question or doubt the love of my mother. She was doing her best to support me, to help me, but it was counterproductive because it was all based on these misunderstandings about the nature of thought, about where feelings are coming from. And so, what happens nowadays is I can help parents to see this in their own experience so that they can help their kids see it.
What is it that you think parents need to be aware of first and foremost, though, when they are faced with children who do seem to be struggling?
Yeah. The kids are doing their best too. We're all doing our best all the time. And what it means to do your best is what makes sense to you in the moment based on your present understanding and awareness. If your understanding is actually based in a misunderstanding, then your best might look like a tremendous struggle. It might be couched in suffering. It could lead to self-harm. It could lead to, any kind of outcome that really might not be what a parent wants for their kid, or even what the kid really wants for themselves. But they're doing their best based on their present understanding and awareness.
So, if you had your time again, what would you have your mum do for you that was different?
I wish my mom understood the nature of thought. I wish my mom could have helped me see that my emotions and my perception were never telling me about what's outside, right? Never telling me about the friends who didn't really treat me the way I wanted to be treated. Friends, with friends like that, what do I need enemies for? I wish my mom could have understood for her own self that you can never worry hard enough to solve anything. And my mom was such a worrier. That was the water we both swam in, right? So if my mom had understood about the nature of thought, that feelings are a real-time reflection of what we're thinking in that moment only, not what's going on outside, but just what we're thinking in the moment is responsible for how we feel. If my mom had understood that, her experience of life would have been so different. And her ability to show up in her loving, supportive way for me would have been so different, because she could have helped me to see through my own misunderstandings. But because she had those same misunderstandings, she was not equipped to help me see through mine.
So, I know you talk about on your website mental health immune system when it comes to kids. Is this the mental health immune system?
Well, it's the mental immune system, and it's not specific to kids. The mental immune system is a, a, like a built-in human feature, right? Like we have many features or experiences that are common to all humans that work on what we might call an autocorrect basis, right? So
Yep.
yeah, so some easy to relate to examples. What's the longest you've ever stayed awake? I'm sure you've pulled an all-nighter in your life at least once, but have you ever done 2 nights, 3 nights? Like, what's the longest you think you could go without sleep?
Now, not very long.
Okay. And what happens if you try? If you just try to stay awake as long as you can, what will happen?
I know I'll suffer, when I do eventually fall asleep because I'll be overtired and then I won't get up
Yeah, but
feeling refreshed.
the key part is you will eventually
Fall asleep.
fall asleep. That's right.
Mm.
So this is an example of what I mean by autocorrect. Okay, the body knows, or the body will just fall asleep at some point. What about breathing? How long could you hold your breath? Could you hold your breath long enough to pass out or kill yourself?
Yeah, no,
No,
I'm not.
can't
I'm not
happen.
that risky.
No, but like it's not possible. And I think we have an intuitive understanding of this. You could test it out. We could do it right now, like an experiment. Let's just hold our breath for as long as possible. We don't really have to do this because we all know, right? At some point, you're just going to start gasping for air. So this is an autocorrect mechanism that we all intuitively understand, and there's lots more of them. But there are also examples of this that we don't necessarily understand, even though they're there. So helping people to see the way that this autocorrect mechanism occurs with our mind is the mental immune system. Seeing how we can get caught up in thought and feel all the tumultuousness of the thinking that's going on without realizing that that's what we're feeling, because it looks like we're feeling the lousy circumstances around us.
Mm.
And then in the moment of realization that, oh, I'm feeling my thinking as it's occurring, just like that, the mind can become clear and quiet and calm. And what do you notice about how you feel when your mind is clear and quiet and calm? How do you
You just
feel then?
you just feel at peace.
At peace. Yeah,
Mm.
that's right. So the feeling is always telling you about thinking, whether it's, like messy turmoil feelings because it looks like you've got this crazy situation, or peaceful feelings because your mind has auto corrected to that calm, quiet, clear space. That's actually our natural default when we get out of the way.
And it's almost a bit like accepting the thoughts that come and go. A bit like I always liken it to the tide, the ocean
Mm-hmm.
tides. They come in, they come out, and thoughts are very similar to that. They come, they go, they come, they go. And when you can start to realize that they're coming and going, and that you don't have to grab hold of one, and you don't have to then carry that through to that makes me feel scared, that makes me feel angry, that makes me feel frustrated or upset, or whatever the emotion is that you link with that thought, things become so much easier to accept.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell me,
Thoughts
Dave.
come. Uh, uh, yeah.
Sorry, you go.
I have lots of sayings that have emerged through my exploration of laughter as a way of seeing, understanding the nature of thought. So two that just come to mind right now from what you're saying, like with the tide, right? Thoughts come and go, feelings follow in tow, right? Right? We're always feeling or thinking, but it doesn't always seem like that. We don't always realize that. And also, thoughts are inevitable. Believing them is optional.
That I think requires a lot of insight though, doesn't it? Because you've got to have that understanding that we don't have to believe our thoughts.
This is my work, is helping people have insights. right? It's not about what I'm saying. It's never about my words. These pithy memes that I've created are just pointing. They're directing people's attention to what they can find in their own experience. That's the only place we ever learn, is from our own experience, not from words. So my job is creating fertile space for people to have insights and realizations. And the most fertile space that I've found, that also happens to have a lot of health benefits, it's fun, it feels amazing, right? This is laughter.
Yep.
Laughter that doesn't depend on anything external, just like our feelings don't depend on anything external. So if it's true about laughter, it's true about life. That's one of these insights that's occurred to me. And I just keep seeing the truth of it over and over and over.
So how often would you laugh a day?
Oh, well, I have a program called Laughter Gym. And this is part of what I think you were starting to ask
Yep.
about at the start of the pandemic. So first of all, we're recording this on the 11th of October, 2022, nearing my 12th anniversary as a daily laugher, right? So on the first day of 2011, I'd already been exploring intentional laughter a little bit in the months uh, leading up to that. But on the first day of 2011, I began exploring laughter as a daily experience, and I never stopped. So I've created all sorts of different programs and classes and trainings, all sorts of things as I've discovered more and more through my experience of laughter. And um, there was like a little transition around my daily laughter offering that happened right when the pandemic started. That's when I created Laughter Gym. And at the time, it was twice a day, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. So for 9 months, a little over 9 months, I was facilitating a minimum of 2 laughter sessions a day. Every 12 hours, I would get on Zoom and I would just laugh, right? No stimulation to catalyze it, just surrendering to allowing that infinite laughter supply to come out for 15 minutes, right? People around the world would join me. We just laugh for 15 minutes. We'd have a brief pause to reflect, and then we'd have a group discussion about, what did you notice? What was new and different in your experience this time? So we're creating that fertile space for insight, and then we're sharing the insights. And Laughter Gym is still going today. It's just once a day. It's 9:30 a.m. Melbourne time. So that doesn't speak directly to your question of how many times a day do I laugh. I can't count that. I don't I don't know, but at least once every day, I sit in 15-minute, increments
Mm.
of being laughed. This is not a doing, right? I don't go to do a laughter session, right? I don't go to the Laughter Gym to do a laughter workout, right? I just be. I just am. I just exist. And the laughter that's there within me is allowed to come out because my resistance is gone. It's an allowing. And so I say I surrender to being laughed by the universe. And sometimes this challenges people in the beginning, and not even just in the beginning, actually. There are people who have been laughing with me for years, and sometimes they'll have a day where it seems like it's harder to laugh for them. We have just as much to learn and discover and realize from the experience of feeling like our laughter is a challenge as we do from the experience of that complete abandon and freedom of surrender to being laughed. it almost doesn't matter because the nature of thought is unchanged. We can see the nature of thought in all of our experiences. So whether thought is getting in our way of laughing and we feel uncomfortable or awkward, or whether thought has completely gone quiet and the mind is calm and clear and we feel that inner peace and the laughter seems to flow more easily, either way, we can notice if it's true about laughter, it's true about life.
Dave, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today. Just to end, I want to point out that on your website, you have got a list and you call it the hallmarks of a better emotional experience of life.
Mm.
And in that list, you've got connection, communication, optimism. There's a few others, and you end on one. And this is the one that I want to end the show on today because I think it just really sums up everything we've talked about, but everything that as human beings we go through. We think life is difficult. We think everyone's out to make things more difficult and more frustrating and more angry
It
because
seems
we
like it.
see the opposite,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
we find the evidence that we go looking for,
Yeah.
but that's our perception of our realities.
Hmm.
And this is the one that I want to end on. And it says, trusting you'll be able to handle anything because you have a 100% track record of surviving everything so far. And that is your own confidence. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori.
And that is it for another episode of Did You Know? Thank you so much for joining me this month, and I hope that you were able to learn something new. If you enjoyed this interview, please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. And whilst you are doing that, check out my other podcast, Relationship Talks, where we get to take a look behind closed doors at people's relationships. Until next time, I'm your host, Laurie Brooke. Remember, the choice is yours, so make today and every other day the very best it can be.